spend more time now thinking and learning about how you work and how we can work with you. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, so yesterday we asked the question, how many of you like the idea of having a continual harvest, something fresh out of your garden every single week, be able to put on your table, eat with your family? You know, yeah? It goes so much beyond just that. You know, the food that you grow from home will be so much more nutrient dense than the food that you can get from the store as well. As soon as something is picked, it starts a process called desiccation, which the plant begins to break down and the nutrient level starts dropping. And so things that you buy from the store, they could have been picked a week ago, or sometimes even more. Several weeks ago, yeah. And then, you know, sometimes you purchase it and then it sits in your refrigerator for another week before you eat it, right? Sometimes you just eat it right away. The best thing, though, is to be able to go out to your garden, pick something fresh, and put it on your table within minutes. There is a kind of spinach. This is not across all spinach, but this is maybe a more extreme example. There's a kind of spinach that loses 90% of its nutrients within the first few hours after being picked. Again, it's more of an extreme example, but it shows how nutrients can start dropping as soon as something is picked.
Also, I was reading a study that they did on spinach again, that they took off the grocery shelf, and they took the one that was sitting in the front where it had light, and then one that was in the back where it was dark, and the one that had light had more nutrition than the one in the back. And so they got the idea from that there is still photosynthesis taking place, and in the picked leaves. And so after I read that, we began to store our greens. We started putting them in a vase like flowers instead of putting them inside the refrigerator, because, of course, when you open the refrigerator door, the light comes on, and so it's light, but when you close it, it's very dark in there. And so we decided we could have fresher greens if we want to keep, we don't want to use all of the ones that we have just picked. We keep them in a vase on our counter.
So in this session, we're going to be talking about that perpetual harvest and how you could set up a perpetual harvest for your garden. We call this a perpetual harvest hack, how to grow a continual harvest all year round. We'll be talking about both aspects of planting multiple plantings, so you always have something fresh and new coming out of the garden. And then we will also touch on some crops that you can grow and then store. And in a way, that is kind of a continuation of your harvest through the winter time especially. So we're going to touch on, number one, what is succession planting? The problem with crop planting, or the challenge that there can be with crop planting. Our perpetual harvest hack, this is the tool we'll be talking about, and then carrying crops over a longer extended period of time. Some crops you can carry over, like we were talking about yesterday when we talked about overwintering crops, and you can carry them over just by planting them at the right time and then keeping them alive through the winter and harvesting off of them. Some you'll want to actually harvest and then store through the winter, and so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about storage tips and tricks as well. So let's start off with, what is succession planting, or sometimes I like to call this leapfrog planting as well. We have a term in the U.S. called leapfrog. It's where one frog will leap over another one. And so it's kind of this aspect of, you have one plant that is in there, and then as it comes out, another one is going to go take its place, right? Each time you harvest, you have another crop that is ready to plant. And we'll look at an example with lettuce, and then we'll look at an example with peas and green beans. And I want to actually show you this visually here. Let me just put this, make it a little bigger here for you to see. So in this visual demonstration here, you'll see this is the seeding time of the plant of lettuce. This is when you would transplant it, and then this is the harvest time here. And this is in seed time. This is the garden planner that we have developed, and we'll give you a link where you can grab a free account and you can start using it. There's quite a bit you can do even at the free level. But one of the things that it makes it easy to do is set up succession planting. So there's two different ways you could set up succession plantings. One is you can, for example, with these lettuces, we give them about a 2-week harvest window. That's if you're going to harvest the entire head of lettuce. So each of these is a planting. You might plant 10 lettuce heads. And then you're not going to necessarily harvest all of them immediately, but over the span of 2 weeks, you may harvest all of those lettuce heads. So then you can set up a second planting so that it's starting to harvest when the first one is just finished harvesting, right? And so you can create a succession plan like that. However,
so that the goal is that you always have a pipeline of fresh lettuce ahead of you in the garden.
Right. However, when you do that, you'll notice that this is going to be in the ground between the transplanting time and the harvest time, right? So the second plant also needs to have a space in the garden at the same time as the first one, right? Because they're both going to be in the ground at the same time. This third one here, also, if you're going to do it at the same harvest time, or what you could do is you could take it and you can move it over, and it will move over the whole planting, and then you could set up your transplant time where it is ready to transplant when this first one is done harvesting, right? And so then, if you get this seeded in early enough, you'll have a transplant that's ready to take the place of that first planting. You harvest the first one out, and you have a transplant that's ready to go in when that first one has just come out.
Timo.
Yes? Yeah, good question. We do have a layout planner. We can look at that a little bit later, where you can choose how many plants will be in there. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, when you're just setting them up like this, it doesn't necessarily have it there. Although you can add a little label. Like if you come edit it, there's a space for a little label. You could put in 10 plants or something like that if you wanted to.
Yeah, the quantity is connected with the layout on the ground.
How much space?
Yeah, how much space you have on the ground.
Yeah. So this is one aspect of succession planting, or two aspects really. One is having that continual harvest, but then the other is having one plant that's ready to go in when the other one is coming out. And you'll notice that this fourth planting here, the transplant time, is when the second plant is finished. And so it's ready to transplant when this one is finishing, coming out. Another example here is if I add peas in here, I'll just add a generic peas and green beans. We'll add some bush green beans in here. And we'll just look at the peas and green beans here. Peas oftentimes are a spring crop. I believe you can grow them in the fall as well, sometimes, if you're cool enough.
It doesn't work quite as well usually, but yeah, they do it very nicely in the spring.
Yeah. So you can, we will often plant them very early in the spring. And then the green beans, you could take these green beans and you could move their seeding time down and move the entire planting down so that it's ready to be seeded when your peas come out. So a succession planting could be from one crop to a different crop. It doesn't always have to be the same crop, lettuce to lettuce, But it could start out with peas, and then when those ones are done harvesting, you put in your green beans, and that takes the place of it. Yes, Lisa. Yeah, the green part actually, it's a little artifact, because when you move it, it's supposed to move with it. It's showing the time for that one planting, when it's going to start and when it will end. But yeah, it's a good question, because in the program, if I take this, green beans, they do well anytime during the summer. But if I take it and I move it into the cold, then it will pop up a little warning and say, you may want to protect this crop because it's not as ideal for this time.
So the app is set up so that by default, it will, if you don't give it other instructions, by default, it will suggest to you the earliest time, reasonable time for you to plant that crop. But usually you can go later than that, at least for the spring. In the fall, it does it the other way. It will give you one of the later reasonable times for you to plant, and you could plant earlier, but yeah.
Okay, now we have lots of questions. Are they questions about the application itself or questions about the succession planting? Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. So very soon, we'll come back and we'll walk you through how to, set it up with the app, and we'll answer some of the questions probably, but then we can try and save some time to have the other questions as well. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah. There are varieties that are more heat tolerant, and so it's better to use those later in the season. Also, my brother was just telling me that he's found if he puts shade cloth over the transplants when he first puts them in the ground for the first 2 weeks or so, after that he can take it off and they do okay, but they need to be protected from the heat a little bit when they're first put in the ground. And yeah.
All right, so let's talk about quickly the problem with crop planning. What's the problem with when it comes to trying to figure out when to grow all of these different things?
If you're growing one crop or two crops, there's no problem. You just do it. But when you want to grow 5, 10, 15 different crops at the same time, it quickly becomes very complicated. So for each crop, you have to figure out when is the earliest that you can reasonably plant that crop, the earliest in the season. And then you need to know from when it is seeded, how long will it be until it will be harvested? And maybe if it's going to be transplanted, when will that transplanting take place also? And then once you've figured out when it can be harvested, then you also have to have an idea how long can you be making a harvest off of that crop. We were just mentioning 2 weeks for the lettuce. If you want, you can make it longer for that crop, but you have to have an idea though. And for some crops like tomatoes, it's just one harvest until the frost. So you have to have, for each crop, there's a different harvest window. And then when are you going to put the seeds for the succession crop if they're going to be transplanted? Because you have the crop in the ground, but you have the starts that you want to be starting ahead of time. And you want them to be ready to go in the ground when the previous crop comes out. So when should that be that you start them? And then you also need to know how far into the season can you plant that crop. Is it a summer crop that can't tolerate a freeze, or can you take it into the fall, even into the winter? So how far can you take it? And then you have to repeat all of this information for each crop that you're growing, because they're all different. And then if you get all of that figured out, you have your actual space in the garden. You have to decide how much space for this crop and how much space for that crop, and then how will they all fit together like pieces of a puzzle. But it's not just all at one time, but it's over time. It's all moving pieces over time through the season. And it becomes very complicated very quickly.
Does that sound a little complicated to anyone? It can be a little overwhelming, right? And this is what we were dealing with on the farm when we're growing 50 to 70 different varieties of vegetables, herbs, berries. They're all being started and stopped at different times. And then we realized as we started teaching home gardeners that we have the same problem in the home garden, right? Especially if you want to have a continual harvest. So it's very natural and normal to just be overwhelmed with the process of trying to figure out what to do and when to do it. And so this is where the concept of our perpetual harvest hack was born out of. Because we want to try and make it as simple as possible. Gardening is full of decisions, and if you're going to boil it down, it's the simple art of knowing what to do. That's your plan. How to do it. You want to be able to do those things efficiently, to seed, to transplant, to harvest, and then doing those things at the right time. And timing is everything in the garden, right? Because you're dealing with seasons that are changing all the time. And the power, we could add a fourth one on there, and that is actually knowing where you're going to do it in the garden as well, right? But the power of what we call our perpetual harvest hack is when you have something, when you have a tool that can bring all of these things together and make it easy to know what to do, how to do it, and help you know when to do it in your garden all together in one space so you don't have to think about it anymore. It can very simplify the process a lot more. And so that is why we have built the software Seed Time that you just saw a little glimpse into. And would you all like to see a little bit more of a demonstration of how you could use Seed Time? We'll share a link at the end where you can get a free account, and we can even show you there's quite a bit that you can do at the free level. But I will show you, first of all, when you first get your account, the very first thing you're going to do is you're going to set it up based on your location. Now, we're here in the Netherlands, and the best data we have, because we are based in the United States, the best data we have is from the United States. However, you can pull other locations. We would just encourage you to double check and make sure that the information is accurate. So I don't know, do we have a zip code here in the Netherlands that we could look up? Because we could try.
An address.
9462 Netherlands. This? Here? Yeah. All right. So it pulls your zone at about a 6A. This is a United States zoning system. And then your average last frosts, it says your average last frost would be around May 3 and first one October 19. I don't know, is that fairly accurate? It's pretty good? Okay. So that's good to hear, because I didn't know what it was going to pull. It's all in the system, and then we just pull that information. If you're in other locations here in Europe, you could do the same thing. You can pull it. It will pull the best data that we have available, but then you can double check it, and you can check and see for your location. Seed Time will also bring up your average last hard frost and first hard frost. This is when the temperatures, and we should make the...
It's...
Yes, yeah, it's a freezing, but it's even more of a freezing temperature.
In Fahrenheit, freezing is at 32, and we here said a hard frost is 25. I think that's maybe 3? Yeah, -3. Yeah.
Yeah, because it will be even below 0. Yeah.
I think it's maybe -3 centigrade, something like that.
Yeah.
I looked it up the other day. And
all right, so I'm going to start over here. Once, yes. Yeah. It is just English. However, you can do Google Translate. Rostislav will help you. Yeah. Yeah. And it'll just change all of the text to... yeah.
Maybe you can
yeah.
show us how to...
Good as well.
Could we have him show us how to do it?
It is, but it's on the... let me switch over to here, and we'll do...
It's actually a web application. That's how we started. We are in the process of changing or adding the mobile application. So right now we have the calendar that you saw, and we have a task list. Those are both in the mobile. So you can go to the Apple Store or to the Android store.
Which language would you like?
And download that, but it's just those two parts. You still need the web one on your computer as well. Yeah.
Okay, so now we have the German version of seed time here for our brother. Yes, yeah, we can switch it to Dutch.
So how did he do that?
So if you're using Google Chrome, you use the Google Chrome. If you right-click for the little menu, you can translate to a different language. If you click on that, then you can use the little menu here to choose another language. So now we could switch to Dutch. To Chinese. And now we have it in Dutch, so you're able to use it in Dutch. And then, as you go through, now our database of crops, it changes the names too. That's impressive. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. So that is how you can now use seed time in your native language. Yeah, so the translation may not be perfect, but it'll make it a lot easier for sure to use. All right, so this is the first screen that you will see. This is your calendar. On the left-hand side, you will see the months of the year and then the days of the week across the top. And then these blue shaded areas are the average frost dates that were just set in the settings. So at a glance, you can see, am I in a time that I need to be looking out for a frost in my garden?
The light blue is the light frost, and then the dark is where you begin to have the hard frosts.
Yeah. You can then, the fun part is adding the crops, right? So you can click this green Add Crop button. We have a lot of crops that are built into seed time already. These are built into the database, and anyone with a free account to seed time can use any of the crops that are built into the database already. What's that? And then you can add custom crops as well. Mm-hmm. That is one of the paid features of an upgrade in the account. Yeah. So we have many different vegetables, herbs, and flowers in here, but you can start by searching for one. So for example, lettuce. We can take lettuce. We also have built in quite a large database of varieties as well. Across seed time, there's over 10,000 varieties that are incorporated already in seed time. Of course, you can add your own as well as a custom one.
The way we added these varieties is we just went to the seed catalogs of American seed companies. So, you know, you might have varieties that we don't use commonly.
Yeah.
But
and of course the names are different, so I don't know, maybe with the translate, does it take it when you are typing it in also with the different? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Totally different. Yeah. 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 Mm-hmm.
Timo.
Yeah, very, very good question.
That's a good question. Yeah.
That is coming by the end of this year. We don't have it yet, but it'll be here by the end of the year. Yeah. Seed time is built where, okay, so if you select a specific variety, the reason for doing that is different varieties of lettuce have a different days to maturity. Some take longer to mature, some take shorter to mature. You don't have to select a variety. You can just schedule it for any crop, and it will take the average across that entire crop. So you can use it very simply if you want to just put in averages, or you can be more detailed and choose specific varieties that you want. You can change the color. Under the advanced settings, it will show you this is the list of tasks that will be added to your calendar. This is also where you can edit. If you click on the seeding task, it will have the information of when it will be seeded. This is, again, seed time's recommendation, but you can change it manually. You could change the number of weeks before your frost, or you can set a manual seeding date if you wanted to do that. You can also adjust the days to maturity. So as Rostislav was saying earlier, if you have a specific seed packet that you want to, and it says how many days to maturity, you can go and you can put those in manually as well. And then you can also delete certain tasks if you don't want to add them. You can then schedule it in, and it will tell you when to seed it, when to transplant it, and your expected harvest time as a suggested time for your location based on your frost dates. Excuse me. So then, once it's there, as we kind of talked about already, each crop has a window of opportunity to grow. So this is just one suggested planting time. We try to pick a time in that window, but you can often...
Like I said, the time that you'll see first is what we think is a reasonable first planting for that crop.
Yeah.
At least in the spring.
Yeah. And we'll usually even give it... Yeah, in the spring is usually one of the first times. It might have a little bit of leeway to go a little earlier if you have some protection, but it would be without protection.
Yeah, this is what we're thinking is a reasonable first time to plant without protection. Yeah. Generally, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So then once you have it in here, the entire thing is flexible. So if you forget to seed it, it'll show a week of time to seed it here because our lives are busy. If we were just put in a specific day, that could be a little overwhelming as well.
And sometimes the weather doesn't cooperate. So, if you put a specific day, this is my plan to do it. Yeah. And then we give you a week to find the good time for you and for the weather to...
You can adjust it if you want it on a specific day. You can shorten the time and you can adjust it. But let's say if you forget to seed it on that week, you can move it over to the next week and it will move the entire planting in the system. So you can adjust it as your season goes along and as you are using your garden. Now I'm going to switch over to a plan that is more built out already. You can see that once you add many crops into here, it can end up with quite a bit of information. So there's different ways that you can filter it. You can turn different tasks on and off. So for example, if you want to just see the seeding times for everything, you can take a quick look and see what do I need to seed this month? Do I have the seeds available for that? You could also switch it around and just look at the harvesting ones so that you can see when you can expect to be harvesting those crops based on your plan. So there's multiple different ways that you can filter your plan like that. You can also view your plan in this timeline view that we were talking about earlier. This is by specific crop. And this, by the way, is an example. If I use this little search bar up at the top left, you can start typing in one crop and it will just show that one crop in the calendar, so you can focus down on one. But this is an example of lettuce plantings. Remember how we were talking about how during the winter it takes longer time for the lettuce to be ready to harvest? So this is an example of lettuce plantings coming down into the winter. You'll see these plantings, we start seeding them just 1 week apart, but their harvest times are much further apart as you go into the winter. And then coming in the spring, the opposite happens where they speed up, coming back down, and then through the summer is just a regular planting time. We do have in the settings a winter gardening algorithm here that will auto-adjust those for you. It's experimental, and we encourage you to. There's a training video and a document on it because there's more specific settings you have to set. Otherwise, it can, it can really mess your timings up. But
yeah, you need to read all our instructions on it.
Yeah,
and it's not perfectly accurate. We're still trying to figure out how to make it more accurate.
Yeah.
But
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So, over time, we'll be able to make it better and better as we have more people using it and growing, and we can gather that information. So then in the timeline, you can also sort these by many different ways. You can sort them by the seeding date, by the harvest date. We won't show all of those right now. But what you can then do is once you have your plan built out in the calendar, SeedTime will automatically create a task list based on the calendar. So every day or every week, you can go into the task list. You can see the tasks that are for that time, and then you can go mark them off. This is an example calendar, so now we weren't marking any tasks off, so now it has a huge task list. But you can see it will tell you when that these ones are overdue. These ones are the ones that should be done today. There's different ways you can sort and filter the task list as well. And then you can mark those tasks as completed in the task list. And when you do, it will mark them as complete in the calendar as well. So you will have a record of when you did it. So SeedTime not only helps with the planning ahead, but it also helps with the record keeping. Another example with that is if I was going to take harvesting our carrots here. Let me just go down to the carrots. You can see this one here is marked as complete already. But this one I could say, I actually was able to harvest my carrots into the middle of April, so I can drag it out there, and then I can mark it as complete like that. And now I have a record of when I started harvesting them, when I ended harvesting them, and the next year you can copy your entire plan from the previous year to the next year, so you can work off of what actually happened in your garden, and it can make it easier that way. Also, in the task list, yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yes, so it doesn't learn from your adjustments yet, but if you adjust it, then you have a record of what happened, and you can copy that to the next year, and you can use it and say, this is what actually happened here, and you can copy it forward to the next year. Yeah.
Yeah, our goal is to fix it so we can learn, but we're not there yet.
Yeah. Yeah. That? I like this question because that also is coming up by the end of this year. We are adding it where you can add any kind of task or event or anything like that. You could add it into the calendar as well. But even right now, if you know when your holiday is, you can plan your plantings before or after so that it's not harvesting on the time of your holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, you can make sure that you don't have tasks.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, you can put in waterings
So
and stuff
the
like
watering, there are two things that people often ask us about. One is watering, the other is fertilization. We don't have anything built into the calendar for that because every situation is different. And so we can't build that in. But as Paul was saying, by the end of this year, we will make it so that you can set custom tasks. You can create, go back to the calendar so you can, we have the calendar is a series of tasks. So there's the seeding task, the transplanting, and the harvest. We have some other tasks, cultivating tasks that we called them, that we built into the calendar that you can show if you want. And you will be able to add any custom task that you want in there. So if you have a plan that I need to fertilize at this point and this point, you can add that into your calendar and it will show that.
All right, and then once you come to the task list here, we also built in for many crops in here. If you click on a task, it will tell you what to do and how to do it for that specific crop with links over to visual demonstration videos showing how to do those things as well. So remember, we were talking about the 3 things to simplify it, to know your plan, what you're going to do, when to do it in the calendar, but then also how to do it so that you have that instruction at your fingertips as well. And then very brief little introduction, you also will have a journal. With a free account to SeedTime, you have unlimited journal entries, you have full access to the journal, you can keep journal entries, you can add pictures, you can link your journal entries to specific plantings inside your calendar, and then you can come search those or filter them later just for ones about your carrots or different things like that. And then last year, the big thing that we released last year was SeedTime Layout, and this is where you can lay out your garden visually. It's a full design tool, so you can make your house, your garden beds. It can be anything from pots. These brown ones are planting locations, so it can be pots or raised beds or beds out inside a hoop house. And then it syncs with your calendar plan here. So if I go back to January here, in this one, I will just hide this here, just to make this a little bigger. What happens is there's this little slider, and as you move across, SeedTime will not let you put a plant in its location until the time that it's actually expected to be in the ground. So that way you can use it as if it was real life. And you can walk through your season and add your plantings in and take them out. So you can see we have succession plantings of lettuce going in down here. Our carrots have finished harvesting here. So we now are putting peas there instead, and beets are here. But eventually the beets will come out, and we will put green beans in their place here. And then you have more greens coming in down here. Someone was asking about crop rotation. This same plan is using a crop rotation. So if I went even earlier, the green beans would have been down in this bed, but the next year we come and we plant them up in this bed. So you can walk through your entire season adding your crops in, and you can see how they come in and how they go out, and you can really maximize your space because you can say, hey, this, during this time, this bed is empty. There's nothing planned to be growing there, so let's see how far back that goes. We put in, because we realized it was empty during this whole time, we said, hey, we can put in a cover crop, keep those living roots in the soil, and it will help benefit the soil during that time where we're not planting another crop, right? And so then you can maximize your space. Yeah, good question.
That's a good.
Yeah, it does not yet have that, but that is something that's on our development list to add.
That
So
is
you'll
one
have
of
a history.
the frequently asked for things.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is a very brief glimpse at Seed Time, and at the end we'll give you the link again to where you can grab a free account to use Seed Time as well. However, in the last few minutes, we wanted to touch quickly on carrying crops over, and then also some tips on storing crops through the winter as well. So some crops can be carried over the winter. You actually saw that. I don't know if any of you caught it with the carrots that we had in there. We pulled the harvest time over the whole winter because we can just leave those out in the ground. We're going to be harvesting off of them. They're really some of the sweetest carrots.
Oh, they're very nice.
What is it about the cold that sweetens them up?
Well, the cold makes the sugar come out in them, and so so many vegetables are that way. Your carrots, your beets, your greens, the kale.
Yes, all of them end up being sweeter.
So nice.
The frost helps sweeten it up. Yeah. So examples of these are carrots, beets, greens. Yes. Yeah.
No, they're quite hardy.
Yeah. We have
most of them are quite hardy. Yeah.
We have had carrots in the ground where usually the ground does not freeze in Tennessee. At least not significantly.
Right.
It will have frost on the top, but it doesn't actually freeze down. But we had a winter where it actually froze about 6 inches to a foot down in the ground. And we took hot water from the kitchen and poured it out on the ground to thaw the ground so we could harvest the carrots to give to our CSA customers. So they can handle a lot of frost.
The damage that happened in that situation was, sometimes the shoulder, the top of the carrot is a little above the ground, so some of those became damaged, but the roots that were under the ground were fine. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And actually the snow acts as an insulator. It's even better.
Yeah.
I wish we had more snow.
So what we usually do is we have our field of carrots, and then we have a floating row cover, what was the fleece? The fleece that we pull that over the field if we expect a hard frost, and if it's going to freeze very, very hard, then we'll pull a second one over them. But we don't do more than that.
And the other thing that you want to make note of is that you want to make sure you grow some extra because you're going to be harvesting it over a longer period of time. So in the spring, you might just grow the amount that you're going to eat over a few weeks or do some succession plantings. But in the winter, if you're harvesting over several months, you kind of want to calculate how much you're going to harvest, which, by the way, I'll just show you very quickly here. We have built in a tool in Seed Time where you can add crops into this tool. It doesn't sync with your calendar yet, but we plan to add that as well. But you add the crops that you want into this tool, and then it has a growing calculator where you can choose how much pounds you want to eat. It'll give you a suggestion based on how many adults and children you're growing for, but everyone has different eating habits, right? So you may want to adjust it for yourself. But you could say, I want 30 pounds. I'm sorry, we need to do kilos here. Yes, the metrics. We need to get the metrics in. Coming, yes, not yet. But so you can put in 30 pounds here, and it will tell you, you can also put in the number of rows you're planning to grow in a specific bed, and then it will tell you how much bed feet you need. We'll get it updated at some point where it'll tell you meters or centimeters. And then it has the average harvest amount for that, the plant spacing, and the number of plants. So it's just an extra tool that you can use for doing some of those calculations on how much you want to grow. All right, storage tips and tricks. We'll go through just, let's see how much time. We have about 10 minutes. We can go through some of these here. I think we only cover a few of them here. So potatoes. Do you want to touch on?
Okay.
Potatoes?
So potatoes can be cured in a couple of different ways. One is you can just leave them in the ground until the plants die, and let them be dead for a couple of weeks, and then dig the potatoes out. One caution there is you want to make sure that the plants died a natural death, that they didn't die because of disease. Because if they died because of disease, that may ruin your potatoes. If they have a disease, you want to take the plants out as soon as possible. And the potatoes may be okay, but if you let the disease will go down into the potatoes and infect the potatoes, and then it'll ruin the potatoes. So yes, for storage especially. Yeah. So, but that's one thing. Or you can harvest them anytime after they've flowered, but especially when they just start to die, and then keep them in a dark room that's 16 to 24 degrees centigrade, and about 80 to 90% relative humidity. So it's a little bit humid, and for a couple of weeks, and then you can after that you can store them in boxes that are breathable in a dark place somewhere between 4 and 10 degrees centigrade. They still like it a little bit humid, but that's not so important then.
Another thing to note that we like to point out here is that these numbers, they may sound a little precise, but this is just the ideal for the curing process or for the storing process. So you can store them in other conditions. They may not store quite as long, but you can still store them for a good amount of time. Some people don't have like a perfect environment for storing or for curing, but then you can take them and just do it as best you can. Curing it hardens the skin a little bit more so that it stores longer. We had a question.
Just a question to you. In some parts of the UK, we get quite an issue with a disease we call potato blight.
Yes. Yes, that's the disease I'm talking about. You don't want that to go down to the potatoes.
We've not grown this ourselves at all, but I've heard there is varieties of potatoes that have developed for organic gardening now, which are quite resistant to blight. I don't know much about them. Have you tried those?
You know, we are growing varieties that are recommended for our area, and I haven't really looked at whether they claim they are resistant or not. But the recent varieties we've grown we haven't had much problem with blight, whereas we have had with other varieties in the past. So they probably are more resistant, the ones we're using now. Okay. Yeah.
And that's something that you can look for even for other crops. There will be tomato varieties that are more resistant to blight, or other specific varieties that, especially you can look for the types of diseases that you know are common in your area, and look for varieties that are
then when you are choosing your seed, you'll want to look to see if you can find seed varieties that are resistant to those diseases that you have. Yeah. Yes. curing it, yeah, it's a process that makes it, helps it to store better for a longer period of time. It's a hardening.
It hardens the skin of the plant, so, or the fruit, the root, the potato itself.
Yeah.
It hardens the skin so that it stores longer without going bad as quickly. Yeah.
Yes.
They don't store as long. You can still store them, but they may not store as long. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, again, you can store them, but they may not store as long. They may not last as long. I mean, most of the time, we ourselves, on the farm, they have a cooler, and they're able to store things colder. But for our home, we don't have the ability to do that, and so we just find the coolest place we can. We tried storing some things under our house. We have a space under the house that's cooler. So you just do the best you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, we have, and I would still love to. We just have not done that yet.
When we just moved and put in a tiny house, and I wanted to put a root cellar under it, but in the end, it wasn't so practical to do it, and so we didn't do it, and I'm still regretting that. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, some people do that.
Yeah.
You can just dig a hole and even have a box or container that you put in the hole, and then you can cover it with something that lets you take it off easily. And like you could even cover it with some wood and some hay, and yeah.
You could probably put like sawdust in there and store your potatoes and stuff, or carrots and stuff in there. Oh, really? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, we have just a very few minutes left. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Just before coming here, I harvested our sweet potatoes, and I was trying to figure out where can I cure them, and because they like it very warm, and I was thinking that I have a small shed, and I was thinking I'll put a heater in there and just leave it running the whole time we're gone. And then I realized my car sits in the sun and gets very hot. And I'm not going to be driving it during this time. So I just put them inside my car, and I hope that they're cured well when I get back. And that's not going to cost me anything to run the heater. So
That's really great. All right, so very quickly, you want to make sure not to wash your potatoes before storing them. Just rub the dirt off of them with your hands. Washing them can shorten their storage life.
And this is true for almost all of the storage crops. You don't want to wash them.
And be careful with Irish potatoes because the sunlight can actually cause a reaction. It turns them green and it makes it not good to eat.
By the way, if that has happened, you can just cut the green part off.
Yeah,
and
cut the green part off.
The rest is still okay. But
if you're
Oh, really?
sensitive, you've got to be careful. Yeah.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
We will wash them when we're ready to use them, but if you wash them ahead of time, they will deteriorate very quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, and then these are just a couple varieties that have been good for us, but I don't know if you have the same ones here or not. We are at the end of our time, so this goes into curing sweet potatoes, which is similar. We don't have time to go through all of it, and winter squash, but we will try and get these available for you with a link. I guess we go into onions. Oh, wow, we had a lot more here with garlic as well. So we will try and get you a link to where you can download the slides, and then you'll be able to have all the information for the curing of the other crops as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that it was related to showing you the actual application and how it works. Yeah, so, yeah. Thanks for the reminder, though. That is good. All right, why don't we have a quick prayer, and then we'll get ready for the next class. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time we have had together. We pray that you bless as we go into the next session and as we continue thinking about how we can grow food for our families. In Jesus' name, amen. So I believe there will be a short break, and then at 11:30, we will have the next question. Yes, yeah. Side, we didn't show you, but there's one of the little modules on the side is a classroom, and it has teaching going through just the basics of gardening, through the different aspects of gardening. It's also where we link over. When you click on a task, it tells you what to do, how to do it. It'll click over to those videos so you can watch them as well. Yeah. 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 So many of them do because sometimes, especially those that become affiliates with us, there will be those that will promote seed time. And when they promote seed time, we may do a webinar with them, and we'll tell them that we don't sell over Sabbath. And so that oftentimes is a conversation where they recognize that we keep the Sabbath, and we've been able to connect with people on those lines. So yeah, it's a blessing to be able to. I was over. There is a man named Justin Rhodes. He has a very large YouTube channel in the homesteading space. I went over to his place. He asked to interview me on his podcast one time, and very interesting. They keep the Sabbath themselves. They used to keep all of the Old Testament laws, all of the feasts, everything. They don't do that anymore. But one of the things that they have kept is they continue to keep the Sabbath. Not really as strictly as we would keep the Sabbath, but they take it as a rest day. And so that was something that we were able to connect on a little bit and talk a little bit about spiritually. Justin Rhodes is his name. Yeah, he has a very large YouTube following in the homestead space.
Tell about when he interviewed you.
Yeah, so when he interviewed, I thought that we would probably talk mostly about seed time or something like that. But because I went to his farm early and I joined him doing the chores on his farm. So we went around and we're feeding the chickens and everything. And as we were doing that, we began talking, and he asked me, "Are you Seventh-day Adventist?" I said, "Yeah, we are Seventh-day Adventist." He said that their midwife was Seventh-day Adventist. Because he knew when I came, I mentioned to him, I don't know what you have planned for the meal. Just wanted to let you know ahead of time that I eat a plant-based diet. I'm happy to bring my own food. Don't feel inconvenienced to try and feed me or whatever. So when I came there, he said that his midwife was a Seventh-day Adventist, and they had tried giving her some of their chickens or whatever, and she had told them that she doesn't eat anything with a face on it. And so they had kind of learned about Seventh-day Adventists a little bit through their midwife. So then he kind of connected the dots, and we had quite a bit of conversation. And then when it came to the podcast, he asked all kinds of questions. He asked about keeping the Sabbath. He asked about why do you eat the way that you do? Why are you eating more of a plant-based diet instead? So shared quite a bit about the blue zones and both the spiritual aspects of it. We talked about the spiritual aspect of wanting to care for our bodies all the way to just the health aspects of it as well. So it was... it was really quite the opportunity to connect, and we still have a very good relationship with him. Yeah. 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 And that has been one of our goals, even just starting many, many years ago when I started teaching online. I had a vision of, Ellen White talks about being the head and not the tail, right? We want to be part of the agriculture space and have an influence in that space. And so that's our prayer. And I would ask you to pray for us as we continue to connect and build relationships with these other leaders in the space, because I think it's a huge opportunity. Yeah.
Just another example, Michael Kilpatrick, he contacted us recently. He has a dream of becoming a distributor of tropical roots, and so he contacted us to see if we might have any connections through our church with people in Central and South America. So, yeah.
He is, yeah. Most of the people that we have invited on are Christians, and one of the reasons with that is that a lot of, I think probably mainly the 1-2 exceptions would be like Elliot Coleman, and there was one other gentleman that was talking about permaculture. I'm not sure exactly, but we're very careful who we invite to be a part, because there's a lot of strange mysticism and ideas in the gardening space as well. So there's a whole Christian homesteading movement that is quite openly Christian, and then there's a whole another aspect on another side that is really quite secular but spiritual. They recognize the spiritual, and they get even more. They lean much more towards a pantheistic view of the earth as being, yes, going into biodynamics and all of that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Will Bonzal? We have not. No.
We have a friend though, who yeah, you know him. Yeah. No. Wait, in which book? The homesteading. Yeah. Uh-huh.